Jan, as a senior editor at the Epoch Times, a premier publication that's been at the tip of the spear, really exposing the Chinese Communist Party's various campaigns, information, disinformation is a critical part of this unrestricted war. If you could, talk to us about how they have leveraged information, not just with COVID, but beyond.
Absolutely. If I may just mention, Joe Wong, he disappeared from here moments ago. Oh, he's back there. Joe, about 8 years ago, took a chance on a film which was proposed. It was a quote-unquote optimistic Holocaust documentary about my father-in-law. And he made it happen. He helped this award-winning film happen, which was kind of a labor of love. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for making, basically helping make this film happen. This is just kind of unbelievable. When it comes to information, I'll just mention one thing as we start. During the whole, let's call it COVID crisis, okay? We were actually getting a lot of insider information from inside Communist China, from people who were, we have a kind of deep underground network of sources in Communist China. And a number of those people, we very early on realized that this pandemic was happening, that there was a significant death toll within China, and a number of people who shared this information, right, also about the draconian zero COVID policies, welding people into their homes and all this. A number of those people that were sharing information are now in prison in Communist China, because they risked everything. So this getting out of information, you saw, this is obviously a very important part of this film, that theme, right, is so critical, right? Breaking through this, what they call the Great Firewall of China, using whatever means possible is so critical. So it's my hat tip to the people that are in China that are actually trying to get information out, and the people outside of China who risk, a lot in order to do that. And as we can see, Jan's family has been basically reprised against already, and God knows what else will happen. But the point is, the message is so critical. Okay, in terms of the other methods of information warfare that the CCP has been applying, I mean, gosh, I don't even know where to start. I mean, one example I could just give off the top of my head, a lot of people don't know this, but among US cable systems, okay, in US cable systems, basically there's Chinese Communist Party channels. It thoroughly penetrate the entire US cable system, and they also have American companies basically serving to distribute those channels and make sure that they're maintained. So it's not like a ton of people are watching CGTN, right? English CCTV propaganda, Chinese propaganda television, but they absolutely have. It's available on every single television in America that has cable. That's just one piece. We could go into this greatly, but you can imagine the information they share. Another piece, they were until not too long ago, they were basically putting in supplements into the top newspapers in America, right? New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post. So basically Chinese communist propaganda that had a little note that said this is actually, a paid insert. But how many people knew that? Like the ability to influence, right, the elites of America with their message for, and they didn't even spend more than a few $1 million on that, right? Like we were bought off cheap, from what I can tell. That's another, just kind of off the. Never mind, some of the recent stuff that's been happening. But I just want to give you a picture of how deeply these information operations function here in America.
I believe you actually interviewed a member of Congress that introduced legislation to remove China Daily that's being widely distributed in Washington on Capitol Hill.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Actually, a freshman congressman, Aim Habane, the first thing he did is a really, really interesting guy because he's of Druze ancestry, very relevant. Many people had never heard of Druze until recent activity in Syria and Israel and so forth. but deep, incredibly patriotic American, and he just happened to notice, right, that China Daily is, appears in every single office, right, and he wanted, it's not that in congressional offices, exactly. So the point wasn't that if you really want China Daily, you can order it, but it shouldn't just be distributed, by congressional aides across Congress. That's insane, right? So, about TikTok? Okay, so getting up a little bit up to the present, how many of you have heard about the TikTok controversy? Right? I hope most people have. Basically, we've learned over the however many last few years that these apps, platform apps, right? For example, Facebook, Instagram, they both collect unbelievable amounts of data about us, right? And then they push back incredible amounts of specific information that is catered to based on that information that was gathered, to our particular likes and so forth, to the point where, there's, a serious mental health crisis, for example, among young girls because of, activity on Instagram and so forth. My point is these are unbelievably powerful technologies, okay? So what the CCP did is they bought an app and then they supercharged it in the most addictive possible way, and essentially have, I don't know, is it 100 million American, that's just American users, basically, on an app which has the same unbelievably powerful capability as, say, Facebook or Instagram or these others, except controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, which is waging, as our mutual friend Gordon Chang likes to say, overtly a people's war against America. And of course it declared, and we, of course, and some of you may know or may not know that a law has actually been passed for that, for either full divestment of the CCP or basically shutting it down in America, and that hasn't happened yet. And hopefully we'll find a solution to that quick. But the point is, at the moment, and there's multiple examples of how this has actually already been affected, the CCP has an unbelievable ability. Right? Imagine, right, everything that ever comes into the field of view of your camera is collected and sent back to Communist China and analyzed to understand exactly the subtle nuances of your particular psychology, and then how that can be influenced, right? And then used, en masse to feed the AIs of that Communist China is growing. And then, of course, that ability can then be used to feed certain things, like basically during some of the riots in 2020 and so forth, basically feed to people, how to basically cause social chaos, which is actually something that actively happened at that time. And there's many examples, but the point is, we know bad intent, right? I think this film, this is one of the things this film really, I'm sorry, I'm kind of monopolizing here, but this film, you got me going, Steve.
We'll blame Frank.
This film, shows us, this is what is incredibly powerful about this film. It shows us, I think the nature of this power structure, the Chinese Communist Party, that it doesn't have good faith. It functions to control people, even in conflicted ways, like the general herself, the coldest, most chilling character, which in the film herself is kind of held captive in a way by this ideology, by this regime. So, and we've given it the most powerful tool. We allow it to have the most powerful tool of influence to ever exist in the history of the world. That's a problem.
Yeah, TikTok is a major weapon in the unrestricted war that the Chinese Communist Party is waging. And I think it's worth noting, an anecdote to that. Perhaps we'll see the CEO of Ganjing World, Sherry Yin, mentioned there's more to come. Ganjing World, a big partner here with unrestricted war, about to launch on August 8th on that platform, is the promise to not use your data and content